Hi there. This is my review for A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, Episode 3, The Squire. My reviews focus on the 7 most notable points about an episode, because 7 is a good number. So let's dive in with point 1 of 7. Keeping Egg's secret. That the big twist of the story is that Egg is really Prince Aegon Targaryen, fourth son of the king's fourth son. And how do you even market this show when the central connection to Game of Thrones is a secret character reveal? And it's not even, just a book spoiler. Anyone who watched the Game of Thrones TV series since season 1, there was a prominent scene where Maester Aemon explained that Egg was king, and he calls him Egg in season 5 as well, as he's calling for him on his deathbed, that purely from watching the shows, people would know that. It's like trying to keep, if you hypothetically made a Robert's Rebellion prequel, so many things in it are referred to things that, oh no, Lyanna really ran off with that Jon is their son. We're getting into things that were mentioned in the main show. People would know that. It's a closer show. That House of the Dragon was 200 years ago. This is only 100 years ago. So I don't envy the impossible situation this put showrunner Ira Parker in. That, oh, we're the toxic fans, or I think, no, we completely sympathize. There was nothing he could have done. But after the reveal, Parker actually did address this in the post-episode interviews. That he had an interview with The Wrap in which he said he actually got advice on this from Ryan Condal. Remember, Ryan Condal hired Parker and appointed him the showrunner of this. He didn't have to audition for it. He woke up one day on the phone and went, hey, guess what? You're the new showrunner on the other one. But here's the quote. The truth is, I made my peace with it a long time ago. And Ryan Condal pointed out to me pretty early on that Egg's secret is not a plot point, it's a character attribute. And that, yeah, it'll come out earlier. So Parker and also the episode director in the inside the episode video, the making of video at the end of this, they stressed, in as many words, guys, we're trying to serve both audiences, and we know a sizable number of people, even just from the last TV show who didn't read the books, know he's secretly a Targaryen prince. That we've pointed this out too much, it's just been in the news because they go, well, there's this other show, there's only so many other things Martin wrote that you'd have at least heard of the Tales of Dunk and Egg. And the description, oh, it's Daenerys' great-grandfather when he's a kid. But the entire show isn't meant to hinge on that as this crucial twist that the audience knows. So I like the way they played it, that they said, rather than treat it as this utter mystery that we're going to seed obvious clues, to the point that got checked live reaction channels, it's only 3 episodes in. It's not like it was this big, long-running Who is Jon Snow's mother thing. But casual viewers, TV-only viewers, started to pick up on why is he acting weird when the Targaryen envoys arrive and asks if he can leave. And there were other smaller hints than that. But it wasn't like they were trying to keep it as this giant secret that, oh no, it's been spoiled, that they did the right thing, that if anything, we seeded it heavily enough that a general audience would start picking up on it. And that revealing it doesn't ruin it for you, because it was kind of obvious going in something was up with this kid. He's so odd, he's unusually well-educated, all that other stuff. I also think it's funny that, in another text interview, they also remarked on people talking about his secret identity at Comic-Con. That, again, I was at the New York Comic-Con launch panel, the big launch panel. It had the cast, the showrunner, George R.R. Martin himself, and they put out the first teaser. And the rest of the panel, there were multiple awkward moments where Martin just casually mentioned that, yeah, well, Egg is Daenerys' great-grandfather. He is a Targaryen prince. And I don't have video pointed at the audience for that, but there were like awkward looks throughout the room as everyone was looking to the person next to them like, is he supposed to be saying that? Like, well, why wouldn't he say that? That we weren't really sure how they were going to handle that. So that Martin was openly saying, yeah, that's who he is. So I think the TV producers handled this as well as anyone could have. That if you were paying attention, you could tell something was up with Egg. So it's not talking down to the TV first people. And it wasn't, oh my god, some giant crux of everything. That just, it's an attribute, not a giant mystery. So having addressed the elephant in the room, point 2 of 7. The episode starts with Egg's one POV scene. That also at the New York Comic Con panel, Martin explained that he strictly wanted Dunk to be the only POV character in the novellas. This was new info we had never heard before, the book fandom, that he said, I was actually considering giving Egg a POV section in the third novella, but later decided against it and rewrote that. And you can tell there's a point in the story where Egg goes away and then comes back, where they could have fit in a brief, like, 2-page Egg POV subsection. Not like POV chapters, it's a novella, it's short, but yeah, that lined up. So after New York Comic Con, I was making all these reports on, like, how are you going to make a show with Dunk is literally the only POV? But then we heard from people who saw the screeners said, no, well, not even the screeners, that in the New York Comic Con interviews, Peter and Dexter, they did mention, well, the start of episode 3 has this one Egg POV scene, which was great because it's the one day Peter got to sleep in. But in and of itself, it was a small but nice scene. It was nice to have, and different to have something other than Dunk. But the bigger issue this touches on is their use of flashbacks. I mean, think about it, that when Egg meets Sir Robin Riesling, they use a flashback to show how he lost his eye. Egg wasn't physically present at the tourney where he lost it. So this demonstrates that they are willing to use flashbacks to, the phrase Elio Garcia used was, demonstrate knowledge that a character possesses, even if they weren't present for it. And why am I so fixated on this? It ties into the bigger question of whether they'd even show flashbacks to the Blackfyre Rebellion. Now, we knew from casting news and things, we'll see a bit of it from Dunk's perspective. He was a kid at the time in King's Landing, so we know from the trailers we're going to see him looting the dead in the aftermath of Battle of Redgrass Field, but would they show flashbacks to bigger things? Would they do this the way the comic adaptation did it, where it's really Sir Eustace explaining the full battle and the army movements to Dunk through his narration? There was real fear they might not do that for a bit. Now that they've established we are willing to show flashbacks from Egg's perspective to he knows the history of Sir Robin, that's fine. I'm pretty sure, cautiously optimistic, we're probably going to get Sir Eustace narrating over footage showing the first Blackfyre Rebellion and the whole Battle of Redgrass Field and everything, and extended like a full episode almost, is how the comic did it. So that is a big issue we were concerned about, of what are the rules with what flashbacks can cover exactly if you have a limited number of POVs. Point 3 of 7. The slow slice of life sequence. Between the end of Egg's POV scene and when Aerion's joust starts, I timed this, that there's about 10 minutes of a 30-minute episode that's just following this cozy day at the tourney with Dunk and Egg. Now, it's a little jarring because the first 2 episodes were very strictly based on the novellas, barring, like 1 or 2 invented scenes that made sense in context. Pretty much the entire first half of this episode, with Egg and then the cozy sequence, everything up to when Aerion's joust starts is largely invented. Some are extrapolations, like the jousting between Harding and Beesbury that happened in it, or they moved scenes, or the thing with Plummer was inspired by a different thing, so it's just weird that it's new, so therefore I have to invest more time judging it, because I'm not just comparing to how they adapted it. And the very first time I saw this, I was a little on the fence, but now I really like it. particularly because after I watched it the first time, I went and saw the behind-the-scenes videos, and director Sarah Adina Smith does explain we wanted the first half of the episode to be this quiet slice of life segment showing the growing bond between Dunk and Egg. Because after he gets arrested at the end of this one, we won't have the opportunity to cover that ever again. And I got that. That makes complete sense, that this is time well spent showing the bond between them, that they're becoming really good friends. He's like this surrogate older brother he never really had a relationship with. And moreover, it's great that in the behind-the-scenes videos, they state, we did this to convey a theme. Themes, my god. The theme is that after a morning of honest hard work, Egg has a meal he's actually earned, that he's had to work for. So it's the most delicious breakfast he's ever had. And they really tried to emphasize that. They showed with the camera shots, lingering, loving shots of the food. George R.R. Martin would approve of that. But it's also a motif in this novella as well, food, and with the commoners and the nobles. And Aerion is a pampered prince who never ate hard salt beef in his life, and the result is he's an arrogant brat. He never made his own meals, versus that Egg is doing this. That makes complete sense. And showrunner Ira Parker also said that the quiet scene, completely invented, quiet scene of Dunk showing Egg how to sew his own clothes, to mend things when they're on the road, that was his favorite of the whole season. And I can see why, that there's all these themes in the show of fathers and sons, mentor and student, that he did promise to actually show Egg I'll show you how to take care of your own equipment, teaching the value of hard work. And once again, as with House of the Dragon, it's nice to have producers who openly say, word for word, the theme of this episode was such and such. That multiple times in House of the Dragon, they'd start the behind-the-scenes video going, the theme of episode 6 here is passing on beef to your children. That episode 6 is season 1 where their children start fighting. That it's nice to have producers who are openly willing to say the theme of this episode is X, instead of taunting the very concept of having themes. Am I living on Earth 2 or something, that Benioff and Weiss in interviews could just in a friendly voice taunt, themes are for 8th grade book reports. And not only did the media give them a pass on that, they gave them their highest honors. That is not something a showrunner should ever say, and that it went beyond notice. They didn't want to report on it. That he's mocking, stories have themes, they're just a bunch of empty spectacle, please praise me. Anyway, rewatching it, I've seen it 3 or 4 times now, I came around to really liking this sequence. The first time was a little uncertain because it's new material, but I now really like it. I went minute by minute, actually pausing and checking the timestamps because I wanted to check, is there ever a wasted minute in these 10 minutes that they devote to this? That it is supposed to be building the bond between them. Really, there wasn't. That even going through this with a fine-tooth comb and a stopwatch of was there a wasted minute out of all of this, it was fine. It was intentionally slow because it was supposed to be cozy. It was serving a purpose. But, well, there is one complaint about it, but it's really for the episode as a whole, not just this 10-minute sequence. So that's really leading into my next point out of 7. Point 4. I feel Tanselle was underused, and they should have invented more scenes with her. They didn't cut any scenes Tanselle had in the novella. Let me stress that, if you haven't read it, they have filmed everything she had, because after Aerion attacks her, she flees and isn't in the rest of the novella. We knew she would only be in the first 3 episodes, and they cover all of her scenes from the text. But I find myself wishing that they'd have invented 1 or 2 more scenes just to round her out. Give her more characterization. Not a lot. Have to stress that too. I'm not saying, we should have invented a subplot where she's the plucky girl solving royal rivalries and political scheming behind the scenes, and she's just as important as Dunk or something. No, just slice of life scenes to round out her relationship with her family, that her uncle runs the puppeteer troupe. Little things just to characterize her. What I mean is, I wish they'd invented literally one or two scenes on the scale of the little scene where Egg meets Robin Riesling. I keep saying, for 20 years I've been saying Riesling, and now they're saying it's pronounced Riesling. Westeros.org had the same issue where they went, that isn't how we've been pronouncing it, but what are you going to do? Sir Robin. That was sort of an invented, well, the actual dialogue was invented. That is his backstory in the book, but it's just Dunk in his inner monologue going, oh yeah, he lost his eye in a tournament 5 years ago. Here they shifted it to a dialogue scene. It's short, it rounds him out, gives him a lot of characterization. They even invented stuff that he's actually like this religious mendicant almost, because it was further of his faith. That was great stuff. All I'm asking is, why didn't Tanselle get something on the same scale as Riesling? That we're talking literally 30 to 60 seconds of screen time, not a subplot. And it's weird when you actually count up screen time. Like Theon Greyjoy in season 2 of Game of Thrones had a little less than 15 minutes of screen time across 10 episodes, and it was this really great subplot. That when you're dealing with, prestige dramas on the Emmy level, it's quality over quantity. A scene with her could be all of 60 seconds, like 2 minutes or less. And these are short episodes. If anything, we were a little worried at how short they are. Would it have hurt anything to add in a 60-second scene of, well, actually, this is the example. I was talking about this before the season came out. I was talking about this a year ago, where this issue came up about how many POVs are there in House of the Dragon. They said loosely 19 characters who can carry a scene is how they call it. I made a video about that. And I ended with speculation on, would we ever have invented scenes of Tanselle talking to the other puppeteers, talking to her family? And I said nothing big, just something like shift to her POV, watching Dunk across the market. He can't hear her, and have her giggling with her family, and her uncle go, oh, he's so big and stupid. And her giggle like she has a crush on him, going, oh yeah, but he's sweet and kind. For all of 60 seconds. And that it's them judging him, and that they have their own agency and their own personality, and that they feel like people and not just objects in his story. And I think that relative to the minimal screen time it would have taken to do that, it would have been really worth it. And it isn't so much a complaint about this episode specifically, but if you were to invent such a scene, it would have fit in during that 10-minute slice of life sequence. That, okay, last episode was when they actually meet her and talk to her the first time. When I went minute by minute, the actual one point I felt was a bit slow, which was all 30 seconds, is when he's trying to buy goose eggs from someone who doesn't speak their language, and he awkwardly says hello to her, and then Egg goes, oh, you have a crush on her, and then they walk away. That specific point, I'm showing screenshots of it now, would have been a great point for a jumping off into 60 seconds of Tanselle with her family and the other puppeteers remarking on what they think of Dunk. And you could even have him in the camera frame, just in the background on the other side of the market. And I really think they should have done that. And this affects, we're talking about the difference between a 10 out of 10 and a 9.9, that they did film everything in the novella. And I understand Martin was very strictly trying to enforce this rule, Dunk is the only POV. We have this one exception at the start of episode 3 where Egg gets some scenes, that's it. So I feel it was a missed opportunity. I am not targeting Ira Parker. This comes from Martin himself. And I feel a little better knowing that if this turns into a 6 to 7 season show, we'll probably see Tanselle again. That just the way the books are written, with no spoilers, you can tell Tanselle will probably show up at some later point. Not in the first 3 seasons, but later. So I hope they round her out more later, because she's the one that got away, the knightly chivalry, the knightly romance of the woman he put on a pedestal in his heart, and the one that got away. Just, I think we should have had literally one or two more scenes rounding out Tanselle on the scale of Riesling. Not even on the scale of that they invented this big dance scene to show Lionel Baratheon, because he is a bigger recurring character. It made more sense to set him up earlier. Just a 60-second thing like that. And it's weird that this was the first time I actually took points off the show for that missed opportunity. Yeah, you should have done that. 0.5 out of 7 is actually a loose grab bag of just covering some reshuffling content in the text and references. But the first one was so distinct, I debated whether to do these as two. So it's 0.5A and 0.5B. They're interrelated, you'll see. 0.5A is the hammer and the anvil. That this is important enough, deserves its own mention. That they have Egg singing this famous song in the book. He didn't write it. It's been famous for years. It's part of their culture. There's this famous song about the Battle of Redgrass Field, which was the climactic battle of the Blackfyre Rebellion 10 years ago. And this is just here to say this continues one of my 7 points from last episode. One of my big 7 points about organic exposition. That I love how they've been gradually introducing backstory by name-dropping things organically instead of a big info dump. That ham-fisted exposition of, as you know, that doesn't work. That you just have someone singing a song and mentioning Daemon Blackfyre did this, but he came from, the country was in peril, and all this other stuff. That was a good way to start slowly getting these names spoken aloud in the show. So I like that they did that, not just as an Easter egg, but as a tool of exposition. That was a smart move they did. And then the rest of 0.5, 0.5b is just some quick notes on things they moved around or things. That Dunk's story about his childhood is taken verbatim from the text, but he gave it in the second novella. That they're presenting it here earlier, that's completely fine. It made sense in context. He'd ask, well, who's your father? Well, I don't even know mine either. The pot shops in Flea Bottom. They have all sorts of stuff in bowls of brown in Flea Bottom. Isn't there a little Ooter in all of us? That also, that scene with Plumber, the games master, offering that Dunk go along with Ashford's son taking a dive because they really need the gambling money and they know he needs money. That isn't invented, but it's drawing on parts of the third novella, which is at a different tourney, where other knights he finds out are taking bribes to take a fall. That type of thing does happen a lot, so that was fine. That was fine that they're just working that in. Made sense to reference it. Also, in case you haven't read any of the books, it's weird having, do we call these callbacks or call forwards? House of the Dragon was written, the Fire and Blood was written after the Dunk and Egg novellas, but it is set chronologically before them. But they were adapted out of order, so House of the Dragon would make little nods and homages to Dunk and Egg, which at the time we understood as not ripping off, but it's an homage, we get it. Like, in the first episode of House of the Dragon at the tourney, they have Daemon tripping up Gwaine Hightower's horse. He didn't kill the horse, he just tripped it. That was a nod towards Aerion stabbing a horse through the neck like this. And we thought it was a fun nod at the time. Yeah, he's playing dirty that people do that. Second thing is, if you're just going by the TV show, that in House of the Dragon Season 2, Corlys's bastard son, Alan, shaves his head so people won't see he has white Valyrian hair. That was a nod to Egg. Egg was the first Targaryen Valyrian person in the books and novellas who shaved his hair to hide his identity. Since then, other characters have done that or have been suspected of doing that. I mean, there's all these theories. Is Varys a secret bastard Targaryen or something? Then again, sometimes people are just bald. And in the third novella, there is a secret Targaryen who shows up, but he dyed his hair. So you wouldn't know. That it's not always, shaving your head. Sometimes you dye your hair. Could be a couple of things. And that also happens in the fifth novel as well. But That's a whole thing I'm not going to waste time getting into now. So please tell me in the comments what you thought of that. They're not ripping off. At the time, it was an homage. They're going, oh, well, he shaves his head the way Egg does. Or that he was tripping up a horse as a callback, call forward, whatever you call it, to Aerion. I liked those. 0.6 out of 7. The performances by the Aerion and Egg actors. That we hadn't seen enough of Aerion last episode to get a feel for how actor Finn Bennett would be playing the role. That it was just the same dialogue he had in the trailer, so I wanted to wait for his real scenes to really judge this. Now that we have, a wonderful performance during the whole final scene at the puppet show tent. That I love what he said in the behind the scenes videos, that he spent a lot of time working this out with the director, how calm he is. Because he's a psychopath. I always hate that trope of the Hollywood psychopaths who are always shouting and snarling. No, real psychopaths don't have people emotions. And Finn said his take is that Aerion is so detached from normal human empathy that he isn't sarcastically taunting Dunk. He is genuinely confused, out of his mind, that Dunk would attack him to defend an innocent girl. And he's not Joffrey Baratheon, who's this utter sadist who's snarling threats all the time. Nor is he the cartoon villain Joker ripoff that TV Ramsay Bolton turned into. No, he really can't comprehend what just happened. And that is more frightening to me. That Finn even said he's so confused he's outright fascinated at what just happened. That he's ignoring his own visible injuries. That is also frightening when someone ignores their injuries and keeps talking in a calm voice. Just asking flatly, and with genuine confusion in his eyes, why did you just throw your life away? That he isn't exaggerating, he's not taunting him, and this is the reality. You just threw your life away. Why did you just do that? That is more menacing than shouting or snarling it. And it really, I even felt it, is what I'm trying to say. You know what this actually reminded me of? Because I'm a film buff. Pulp Fiction. The sex dungeon scene. That when he's about to torture them, that Zed does not snarl in an angry voice, "Bring out the gimp," to be intimidating. He says it matter-of-factly, almost bored. And that makes it a hell of a lot scarier. Well, bring out the gimp. It's just, wow, that it makes him seem firmly in control of the situation. That anger means you're not in control. And the way Aerion said the next line really felt like Zed was saying it. Just flatly, wow, you loosened one of my teeth. We'll start by curb stomping out all of your teeth. And just the calmness in that. You go and rewatch it. That a lot of thought went into his performance. That calm, low effect in his voice. That's the term they use for psychopaths. Low effect. Because they don't have people emotions. I was worried going into this that they just make him Joffrey 2.0 or something. Or just as Ramsay is a rip-off Joker, that they'd be ripping off a Joker thing or something. No, he feels like a distinct new take on an evil character. That just flatly confused by normal people, while being menacing and casually giving out orders to kill people. That Finn did a really good job. And looking at interviews he did, the thought he went into he said we don't have scenes to establish why he is the way he is, so I had to work it out that in his own warped way, he feels Targaryens aren't as respected as they used to be, and he wants to make a show of force. That really, for a limited role in season 1, he put a lot of thought into this. Thankfully, Aerion is like the recurring nemesis of Dunk for the rest of his life. Not in seasons 2 and 3, though, that we know he shows up in later novellas, or planned novellas. Also, Dexter Saul Ansel's performance as Egg in this. That he wasn't in the first episode enough for me to get a real feel for him, and he was better in episode 2, and I liked it, don't get me wrong. This is the episode where I fell in love with his performance. Dexter performing this character. Specifically, his long dialogue scene in the Baratheon tent, philosophically analyzing the meaning behind a bawdy drinking song in a comically serious tone. That he's this little bald Buddha kid, wise beyond his years, well educated, pointing out the logical fallacies in the world around him of, like, I'll hunt you with dogs, but you don't have dogs. Or here, she was good enough at pleasuring men they felt compelled to honor her in song, but not to use her original name. That's it kind of reminds me of, I was looking for this term for a while, it was at the edge of consciousness, and I just realized it after episode 3. Dexter as Egg reminds me of Marcy from the Peanuts comics. How she's always respectfully calling Peppermint Patty Sir, how she's actually really intelligent, but she's also comically serious about everything. A lot of thought into analyzing, well, I don't see why a dog would do that, sir. Maybe we should, sir. It is it reminds me if he's Marcy. I mean, that is high praise. That trope. And finally, point 7 of 7, the fortune teller. I'll leave this short instead of making a whole analysis of it because I don't have screener copies in advance, and I've got a feeling we'll see her again. But in this invented scene, at first I thought, oh, okay, it's just give a prophecy, whatever. What really turned my head was after it when someone pointed out, that's actually the same actress who played the innkeeper in the first episode. That is very conspicuous. So I don't know what they're going with that. Is this a glamour, or is it really the same character, or what? I'm not sure. As for the exact prophecy that's given, some people are really worried about that. No spoilers, but prophecies are always those exact word things like, you will be hated by all. Really? Yes, hated by all of your enemies. Well, screw them, they're my enemies. So, it's all about playing around with the context. And if you think about it, obviously he wasn't hated by all. His brother Aemon, Maester Aemon, still loved him, so I think they just mean he ran into trouble for things, but we have a feeling of what they meant by that. Overall, the whole episode, I'm not formally giving out number ratings, just to give you a feel for the last 2 were 10 out of 10. I wouldn't change a single thing. This one I'd give like a 9.9, specifically because of Tanselle. That if you were going to invent one scene, 60 seconds to round out Tanselle talking to her family or something, there was that specific point in the market where they could have put it in but didn't. I'm left wondering, maybe it got trimmed for pacing, and pacing is a real issue. That you can argue to do that. But I keep wondering if we'll ever see deleted scenes. We haven't seen any deleted scenes for House of the Dragon. We know they exist. We've seen screenshots of some of them. But I don't know why they're not putting out content like that. And we'll eventually see the scripts, at least, when they get to the WGA archives. But I wish they had given more Tanselle content. But that's really a criticism for the season as a whole, rather than it's what they didn't do, the missed opportunity. So, despite that, I still felt the higher highs and lower lows. It's not even lows, it's just you missed an opportunity to do Tanselle. But the high points, like this is Aerion, this is Egg, that they really won me over with their performances by this episode. And the second half, which was really strong. And the way they handled everything. I also loved how the music was a bit archetypal of when Aerion kills the horse, it's classic bad guy music. When they reveal that Egg is really a Targaryen at the end, you have classic telenovela soap opera revelation chords going da da da. And that was great because they're playing around with it on a meta level. So there was a lot of amazing stuff in this episode, and I'm still really liking this. So please like and subscribe, and please leave a comment. I do try to respond to all of them.